Good day, beautiful souls. Have you ever felt that electrifying hum of anticipation at an airport? That universal symphony of dreams taking flight of new beginnings of stories waiting to unfold? Every suitcase, every hurried stride, every whispered goodbye carries a narrative. But what happens when one of those narratives is abruptly rewritten by prejudice? What happens when a journey of triumph is unjustly derailed by an outdated judgment? Today we're diving deep into a story that will challenge everything you think you know about judging a book by its cover. It's a tale that resonates with the quiet resilience of countless Black men and women who, despite their achievements, often face invisible barriers, unspoken assumptions, and the weight of unfair expectations. It's about a young woman, brilliant and accomplished, whose hard-earned seat was denied not by policy, but by prejudice. Prepare to witness a battle for dignity, a quiet storm of injustice, and a reckoning that will shake an entire industry. This isn't just about a flight. It's about the fight for respect, for recognition, and for a world where every single one of us can soar unbound by the shadows of bias. Get ready to witness the unseen crown. Let's begin. Meet Sarah Jenkins. On the surface, she's just another passenger gracefully navigating the pre-flight bustle. But beneath that calm exterior lies a quiet triumph, a silent roar of achievement that few could ever truly grasp. You see, today wasn't just a big day for Sarah. It was the culmination of years of late nights fueled by ambition of proving doubters wrong with every meticulously crafted essay, every challenging concept mastered. She wasn't born with a silver spoon, quite the opposite. Sarah's brilliance was forged in the fires of dedication, resilience, and an unshakable belief in herself, traits often honed when the world expects you to fail. She's a recent graduate, not just any graduate, but one who clinched a full scholarship to one of the nation's most prestigious universities. That in itself, a monumental feat for anyone, let alone a young Black woman navigating systems not always designed for her success. "Hey, princess," the voice on the other end murmured thick with pride. "Already at the gate. Time flies when you're making history, doesn't it?" It was her father, Mir Davison. The reunion after 2 long years apart for her studies felt like a lifetime. Their bond was a bedrock built on shared values and unwavering support. "Remember what I always told you, baby girl," he continued, his voice softening. "Humility, respect, kindness. Those are the crowns we wear, not the ones you buy." His words were a gentle echo of their family's creed passed down from his own humble beginnings, a testament to the man who built everything he had from the ground up, not just for himself but for his community. Sarah smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. She knew his words were more than just a reminder. They were the compass that guided her, a silent promise to stay true to herself no matter how high she soared. As Sarah stepped into the first-class lounge, it was a sanctuary from the airport's gentle chaos. Plush leather chairs, ambient lighting, and the faint murmur of sophisticated conversations created an air of exclusive comfort. She wasn't there to parade her privilege, but to simply be. Her boarding pass, discreetly clutched in her hand, was a well-earned right, not a flaunted luxury. It was a tangible representation of her hard work, a quiet testament to a journey of triumphs against odds. Across the room near the gleaming service counter stood Ms. Albright, the lead flight attendant for Flight 747. Her gaze, sharp and assessing, swept over the lounge, pausing just a beat too long on Sarah. "First class getting too accessible these days, isn't it, Brenda?" she muttered to her younger colleague, a dismissive smirk playing on her lips. Brenda offered a nervous chuckle but didn't respond, her eyes flickering towards Sarah with an uncertain glance. It was a common refrain from Ms. Albright, a quiet, almost imperceptible judgment that permeated her every interaction with passengers who didn't fit her preconceived notions of belonging. This is where it gets interesting, because this isn't just about a flight. It's about the invisible walls we build, the assumptions we make, and the dangerous consequences of judging someone before we ever know their story. Ms. Albright's quiet disdain was a symptom of a much larger issue: unconscious bias. It's that insidious whisper in our minds, shaping our perceptions and reactions before we even realize it. We've all been there, either as the one making the snap judgment or, more painfully, as the one on the receiving end. The halo effect makes us assume positive traits based on one good impression, while the horn effect does the opposite, turning one perceived negative into a cascade of faults. Ms. Albright in that moment was blind to Sarah's quiet dignity, her academic prowess, her very being, simply because Sarah didn't conform to her internal biased blueprint of what a first-class passenger should look like. It's a common mistake, one that leads to countless missed opportunities, misunderstandings, and, as we're about to see, deep lasting pain. The boarding announcement cut through the lounge's serenity, a harbinger of the journey ahead. But as Sarah made her way to the gate, a strange sense of unease began to prickle at the back of her neck. The air, once filled with anticipation, now held a faint tremor of unspoken tension. This seemingly ordinary flight was about to become a crucible, testing the very definitions of dignity, respect, and who truly belongs. The stage was set, not just for a flight, but for a confrontation that would expose the raw underbelly of prejudice and reveal a truth that would shake an entire airline to its core. The gentle hum of the lounge gave way to the focused rhythm of the boarding gate. Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 747 to Dallas is now boarding. The announcement echoed a signal for dreams to lift off. Ms. Albright, now standing at the gate, was a picture of polished professionalism. Her smile, bright and unwavering, greeted a well-dressed gentleman in a tailored suit. "Welcome aboard, sir," she chirped, her tone warm, almost deferential. Then a woman with an expensive designer bag received a similar welcoming nod. It was a masterclass in selective politeness, a stark contrast to the dismissive glances she'd cast just moments earlier. The air itself seemed to hum with an unspoken tension, an undercurrent of expectation. Then Sarah approached. Her posture was straight, her steps deliberate. Her boarding pass held lightly in her hand, displayed in bold letters, "First Class." Ms. Albright's smile, once so fluid, seemed to freeze, a subtle shift in her demeanor that only the most observant would catch. Her eyes, those quick, judging eyes, scanned Sarah, then the ticket, then back to Sarah. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. Surprise, annoyance, perhaps even a hint of indignation. "Excuse me, young lady," Ms. Albright said, her voice still polite but with a new, almost imperceptible edge. "First class is reserved for paying passengers." Sarah blinked momentarily, stunned by the sheer audacity of the assumption. She looked down at her boarding pass, then back at Ms. Albright, her voice steady but soft, a testament to the quiet strength instilled by her father. "I am a first-class passenger," she replied, holding up her ticket for emphasis. "Here's my ticket. There must have been a mistake." But Ms. Albright wasn't looking at the ticket. She was looking at Sarah, seeing not a valid passenger, but a perceived incongruity. Her lips tightened. "You don't belong here, young lady," she said, her tone firming, the politeness now a thin veneer. "If you don't comply, I'll have to escalate this and call security." The murmurs of other passengers began. Some impatient, some curious, others casting fleeting, almost imperceptible glances of judgment, adding to the suffocating weight of the moment. Despite the blatant disrespect, Sarah maintained her composure. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply walked past Ms. Albright, heading directly to her assigned first-class seat, a seat she had every right to occupy. But the battle for dignity was far from over. Moments later, as Sarah settled into the plush comfort of her rightful place, a shadow fell over her. Ms. Albright was there again, her face a mask of what she likely believed was unwavering professionalism. But beneath it, the judgment simmered. "Excuse me, young lady," she repeated, her voice now edged with an almost threatening authority. "This is first class. It's reserved for paying passengers." Sarah, with a sigh of weary patience, held out her ticket again, the bold first class, practically screaming its validation. But Ms. Albright simply waved her hand dismissively, her eyes fixed on Sarah, not on the proof before her. "There's no mistake," Ms. Albright declared, her voice now sharp and final. "You were assigned an economy seat. You need to move now." This wasn't just a miscommunication. It was an active refusal to acknowledge the truth, a deliberate act of invalidation rooted purely in her preconceived notions. She was doubling down, choosing her bias over the indisputable evidence. The whispers from the economy cabin grew louder, a cacophony of judgment and pity. Some passengers exchanged uncertain glances, recognizing the injustice but hesitant to intervene. Others, fueled by their own biases, nodded in agreement with Ms. Albright, believing her authority unquestioningly. This is where the insidious nature of implicit bias truly reveals itself. Ms. Albright wasn't just assuming, she was refusing to verify. She was so convinced by her own ingrained prejudices that she couldn't even bring herself to look at the ticket. The objective proof, right in front of her. This wasn't just a personal failing, it was a systemic one, a mirror reflecting how often assumptions trump facts, especially when those assumptions align with harmful stereotypes. It's a common mistake, one that perpetuates cycles of misunderstanding and injustice. The cost Sarah's dignity publicly assailed, her quiet triumph turned into a humiliating spectacle. "If you don't comply, I'll have to call security," Ms. Albright announced, her voice ringing with a false sense of authority. And she did. The sight of two airport security officers approaching, their uniforms, a stark contrast to the plush seats, sent a ripple of anxiety through the cabin. The situation had escalated from a mere dispute to a public spectacle threatening to turn Sarah's celebratory journey into a humiliating ordeal. Yet even as the walls of injustice closed in, Sarah remained outwardly calm, her composure a silent shield against the rising tide of indignity. She knew this wasn't just about a seat. It was about something far, far greater. The walk through the aisle to the economy cabin felt longer than any distance Sarah had ever traveled. Every step was accompanied by the silent whispers of other passengers, a mix of pity, curiosity, and sometimes even veiled judgment. The plush quiet of first class was replaced by the low thrum of the engine, the closer proximity of fellow travelers, and the undeniable sense of being displaced. Sarah settled into her new seat, outwardly composed, but inside a knot of frustration tightened. Humiliation is a heavy cloak, and it draped over her, making the air feel thick and every glance a burden. Meanwhile, back in the hallowed space of first class, Ms. Albright's triumphant return was almost theatrical. Her smirk, now unrestrained, spoke volumes. "Handled it," she murmured to a colleague, her voice carrying a smug satisfaction. "Some people just don't understand where they belong. First class is for people who belong here, you know. That girl didn't even look like she belonged in first class." The words hung in the air, dripping with prejudice, reinforcing her distorted reality. It's a chilling reminder of how deeply ingrained biases can blind us, turning an act of injustice into a self-righteous triumph. How often do we consciously or unconsciously dismiss or diminish someone simply because they don't fit our narrow, preconceived notions of what success, wealth, or even just belonging should look like? This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much larger societal ailment where stereotypes dictate worth and outward appearance becomes the sole measure of a person's potential. In the economy seat, Sarah fought an internal battle. Every fiber of her being screamed to text her father to unleash the torrent of anger and frustration bubbling beneath her calm facade. But then Mr. Davison's voice echoed in her mind: humility, respect, kindness. Was reacting with anger truly embodying those values? "Every humiliation is a test, not an ending," she remembered him saying once. She looked at her phone, her thumb hovering over his contact. No, she thought. Not yet. I need to handle this with the dignity he taught me. This quiet resolve, this deep-seated strength was her real superpower. It's easy to react with fire when you're burned, But true resilience lies in choosing composure and standing firm, even when your world feels like it's crumbling. For those of us who have faced adversity, who have been underestimated or dismissed, this moment resonates deeply. It's the silent struggle of maintaining your peace, even when someone is actively trying to shatter it. The flight continued, a monotonous hum of engine noise punctuated by the occasional clatter of service. Sarah quietly tried to signal a flight attendant for a glass of water, but every time it was Ms. Albright who passed, her gaze pointedly avoiding Sarah's, her back stiff with dismissiveness. It wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. A calculated act of neglect designed to reinforce Sarah's perceived lower status. Each time Sarah felt a fresh pang of frustration, a slow burn of indignation. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about basic human respect denied. It was the microaggression that cuts deeper than overt insults because it chips away at your sense of belonging, your very humanity, in small, insidious ways. This is where Sarah's internal resilience truly shone. She didn't lash out. She didn't make a scene. She simply held her head high, absorbing the blow but not letting it break her. That deliberate act of disrespect, the repeated dismissal of a simple request for water, was the final straw. It wasn't about the water. It was about the profound lack of decency. The quiet storm inside Sarah finally found its direction. Her fingers flew across her phone screen, tapping out a message to her father. This wasn't a complaint. It was a statement of fact, a call for justice. "Dad," she typed her words concise and clear, "the flight attendant is targeting me. She's deliberately ignoring my requests and making me feel unwelcome. It's becoming unbearable." Miles away in a high-rise office building, Mr. Davison's phone vibrated. He glanced down, his expression calm. Then he saw Sarah's message. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of fierce protectiveness replacing his earlier calm. He didn't need to read between the lines. He knew his daughter. For Sarah to send such a message, the situation had to be dire. This wasn't just his daughter being inconvenienced. This was his daughter, his brilliant, resilient Sarah, being unjustly targeted and humiliated. In that moment, the loving father merged with the powerful CEO. "Stay calm," he typed back instantly, his fingers flying across the screen. "I'm making the call now." He looked up, his gaze sweeping over the panoramic view of the city, a quiet determination settling on his face. The wheels of immense power were now turning, set in motion by a single deliberate act of disrespect on a flight high above the clouds. As if guided by an unseen force, a young black girl, perhaps no older than 8, seated a few rows ahead, turned around. Her eyes, wide and sympathetic, met Sarah's. She didn't say anything, but she offered a small, hesitant smile, then turned back, pulling out a colorful crayon drawing of a superhero and placing it subtly on the armrest for Sarah to see. It was a tiny gesture, a whisper of solidarity, but in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. It was a reminder that even in the face of widespread indifference or active prejudice, there are always allies, always kindred spirits who see your struggle and offer a hand no matter how small. This unexpected alliance, born from shared experience, provided an immense quiet comfort to Sarah, strengthening her resolve. It taught her a profound lesson that even a small act of kindness can pierce the darkest clouds of injustice, and that empathy is a powerful, unifying force. High above the clouds, a quiet hum filled the cockpit. Captain Miller, a man with decades of flight experience etched into his steady gaze, was meticulously overseeing the flight's progress. Then a distinct chime broke the serene calm. A secure line usually reserved for the most critical communications blinked red on his console. He pressed the button. His voice calm, professional. "Captain Miller," he stated. A moment of silence, then a voice on the other end, calm yet undeniably authoritative, began to speak. Captain Miller's expression shifted subtly, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly. He listened, his grip on the controls remaining firm, but a new focused intensity settling over his features. "Understood," he finally said, his voice now imbued with a newfound gravity. The call ended, but the weight of it lingered in the air, transforming the routine flight into something far more significant. The quiet storm was brewing, and the first rumble of thunder had just been heard. Back in the first-class cabin, Ms. Albright was still basking in the glow of her perceived triumph. She moved with an extra swagger, her previous scowl replaced by a self-satisfied smirk. Some people just need to be put in their place, she might have thought, or even whispered to a passing colleague still confident in her judgment. Then the crisp, authoritative voice of Captain Miller crackled over the intercom. "Ms. Albright, please report to the cockpit immediately." Her smile faltered. The suddenness, the urgency, and the captain's tone, usually reserved for operational matters, sent a shiver of unease down her spine. Her colleagues exchanged nervous glances. Something was wrong, very wrong. With a forced air of composure, Ms. Albright made her way to the cockpit. The moment she stepped inside, the captain's stern expression confirmed her worst fears. He didn't waste time. "Ms. Albright," Captain Miller began, his voice low but firm, "I just received a call from Mr. Davison." The name hung in the air, heavy with unspoken power. Ms. Albright blinked. "Mr. Davison, Mr. Davison." Her mind raced, trying to connect the dots, but before she could, Captain Miller delivered the blow that shattered her world. "He's been informed," he continued, his gaze piercing, "about an incident involving his daughter on this plane." The words hit Ms. Albright like a physical force. His daughter, the pieces slammed together with a sickening thud. The quiet girl in economy. The girl she had dismissed, humiliated, denied. The blood drained from her face, leaving it ashen. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The smug superiority, the condescending disdain, all of it crumbled, replaced by a raw, primal terror. This wasn't just a disgruntled passenger. This was the owner of the entire airline. The ground had just dropped out from under her, and she was in free fall. The captain's next words sealed Ms. Albright's fate. "Mr. Davison's instruction is clear. She is to be taken care of immediately. Well taken care of. And you are to treat her in the best way you can." Ms. Albright could only nod, her mind a frantic scramble of apologies and justifications that would never be spoken. This was the ripple effect in full force. A single act of prejudice born from a casual assumption had now activated a chain of events that would shake her entire career. This isn't just about a powerful CEO intervening. It's about the profound consequences of actions, particularly when wielded with authority. Accountability isn't just a word. It's a force that, when unleashed, can dismantle the very systems that allow injustice to thrive. It's a reminder that every action has a reaction, and that the scales of justice, though sometimes slow, eventually balance. Ms. Albright emerged from the cockpit a completely different woman. The swagger was gone, replaced by a cowering anxiety. Her eyes, once sharp with judgment, now darted nervously around the cabin, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially Sarah. Passengers who had noticed her initial arrogance now exchanged whispered glances, picking up on the dramatic shift in her demeanor. The air in the first-class cabin, once so exclusive, now felt thick with unspoken tension, a silent witness to the unseen drama that had just unfolded. In a desperate, almost pathetic attempt to salvage her situation, Ms. Albright began to hover around Sarah's row. She offered water, then snacks, then an array of drinks, her voice trembling with forced politeness. "Anything you need, ma'am? Can I get you anything at all?" Each gesture was a pathetic olive branch, a futile attempt to undo the harm she had so carelessly inflicted. But Sarah, though outwardly calm, was unyielding. Her quiet rejections were polite, firm, and delivered with a dignity that highlighted Ms. Albright's own abject loss of it. "No, thank you," she'd say, her voice soft but resolute. Finally, with a desperate, almost tearful plea, Ms. Albright approached Sarah directly. Her voice cracked as she choked out the words, "I'm so incredibly sorry for earlier." It was a terrible misunderstanding on my part. Please forgive me. It was an apology born not of true remorse, but of fear and self-preservation. Sarah looked at her, her eyes deep and unwavering. There was no anger, no triumph, only a quiet, profound clarity. "The matter is no longer in my hands, Ms. Albright," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper, yet resonating with an undeniable power. "My father is handling it now. He's the one who will decide whether or not you're forgiven." The words were a quiet sledgehammer shattering any lingering hope Ms. Albright held. This wasn't about vengeance for Sarah. It was about the irreversible impact of prejudice, the profound harm that a superficial apology could never erase. It was about the truth that some lines once crossed create consequences that stretch far beyond a simple, "I'm sorry." It was a humbling moment for Ms. Albright as the realization of the true gravity of her actions and the fact that the consequences were now entirely out of her control washed over her in a suffocating wave of despair. The gentle bump of the wheels, touching down on the tarmac, was usually a welcome sound, a signal of a journey's end. But for Ms. Albright, it was the ominous clang of a trap door closing. The plane had landed. The moment of reckoning had arrived. She stood frozen, her eyes glued to the aircraft door, her mind a frantic vortex of fear and regret. Every passing second felt like an eternity ticking down to the inevitable. Then the door hissed open. The sight that greeted the passengers sent a collective gasp rippling through the cabin. A sleek black SUV, gleaming under the airport lights, pulled up directly beside the aircraft, a silent declaration of immense power. From it emerged Mr. Davison, not just Sarah's father, but the undisputed owner of the entire airline, his presence radiating an undeniable authority. He was flanked by two somber-faced senior executives, their expressions grim. The cabin fell silent, every eye fixed on this unexpected arrival. Mr. Davison's gaze, firm and unwavering, swept across the faces of the passengers, a silent acknowledgement of the events that had transpired. Then his eyes locked onto Sarah, and the formidable CEO melted into a loving father. He strode directly to her, his powerful frame bending slightly as he crouched down, his voice warm and gentle, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. "Are you all right, Princess?" He stood, his gaze now turning to Ms. Albright, who was practically shrinking into the bulkhead. His voice, calm but cutting, resonated through the hushed cabin, a clear and undeniable statement meant not just for her, but for every single person who had witnessed the injustice, and for those who had contributed to it with their silence. "Ms. Albright," Mr. Davison began, his voice imbued with the weight of his authority, "the issue isn't whether you knew she was my daughter." His words hung in the air, a devastating silence. "The issue is how you treated her, and I fear how you likely treat others who don't fit your assumptions of who deserves respect." The cabin erupted in applause, a wave of vindication washing over Sarah, and a powerful collective roar against the injustice they had witnessed. For Ms. Albright, her humiliation was absolute. She was immediately removed from duty, escorted off the plane by silent, stern-faced security personnel, her face a mask of shame and desperate disbelief. This wasn't just a boss firing an employee. It was a public declaration that prejudice would not be tolerated, a powerful assertion that dignity and respect were non-negotiable. In the weeks that followed, the skies over the airline were truly reimagined. Mr. Davison, a man of action and integrity, ordered an immediate sweeping review of all staff training. Out of the incident, a new era was born. Mandatory workshops on diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias were implemented not as a mere formality, but as a fundamental shift in the airline's ethos. The story, fueled by passenger accounts and Mr. Davison's public statements, went viral, sparking nationwide conversations about prejudice, accountability, and the power of standing up for what's right. And what of Claudia Harper, as we'll now call Ms. Albright, to maintain consistency with the original narrative's character development. After a period of profound reflection and, crucially, a heartfelt, genuinely remorseful email expressing a deep understanding of her mistakes, Mr. Davison, ever a believer in second chances, offered her a path to redemption. She returned to work humbled and changed, no longer the arrogant gatekeeper, but an unlikely advocate for the very values she had once scorned. She volunteered to share her story, her own journey of self-discovery, and the painful lessons learned, serving as a powerful living example of how systemic change can begin with individual transformation. It was a testament to the idea that even those who fall can rise again, not through denial, but through honest introspection and a commitment to growth. For Sarah, the experience, though painful, had been profoundly empowering. She saw the ripple effect of the incident, the airline's new training programs, the viral conversations online, and even Claudia's transformation, all proof that change was indeed possible. She had stood firm, anchored by her father's unwavering support and the profound lessons he had instilled in her, that dignity and respect were non-negotiable values. This brings us back to the skies. Weeks later, Sarah and Mir Davison found themselves on another flight, seated side by side in first class. Sarah glanced around, observing the crew as they worked. Their movements were professional, their smiles genuine, and their interactions respectful. There was no hesitation or judgment, only the seamless, dignified service her father's airline was now known for. As one of the flight attendants offered her a drink with a warm smile, Sarah returned the gesture, then looked over at her father and smiled knowingly. This flight was a far cry from the last one, and the change was palpable. It wasn't just about the crew, it was about the empowerment she felt within herself. Sarah knew she had emerged from the experience stronger and more self-assured than ever. She leaned back in her seat, a quiet sense of satisfaction washing over her. Change wasn't always easy, but it was always worth fighting for. This story is a testament to the fact that integrity, when wielded with conviction, can dismantle even the most ingrained biases. It's a powerful reminder to every single one of us, especially those in positions of authority, that true leadership isn't just about managing operations, it's about upholding human dignity. And for every Black man and woman who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or unjustly judged, this narrative serves as a beacon, a reminder that your worth is inherent. Your achievements are valid, and your voice, when raised with courage and supported by truth, can spark monumental change. Even those who falter, those who succumb to their biases, can find a path to redemption, proving that empathy and education can pave the way for true understanding. The skies, once marred by a single act of prejudice, are now a symbol of a more inclusive, more equitable future. If Sarah's story resonated with you, if you've ever faced the sting of judgment, or if you simply believe in a world where respect knows no color, we want to hear from you. Hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel to be part of a community that champions dignity and justice. And most importantly, share this video. Let's make this story a powerful wave that washes over the silent shores of prejudice. Your voice, your experience, your belief in a better world. That's the power that truly moves mountains. Let's continue to elevate the conversation one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being a part of this journey.